Hey, welcome to With Him podcast. I'm Raz. This is Dr. J,
Hey.
Dr. Jamie Moore. How you doing, man?
Doing great.
Doing fantastic.
Doing really, really good.
You know why this is an amazing day? Because we have an awesome guest. I'm
Yes.
excited. Also, once again, this is a
repeater.
This is a repeat guest. This is only our third.
Second or third repeat guest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What an honor.
So
What an
kind
honor.
of a big deal.
Totally.
Kind of a big deal.
Ann Thompson
Yes.
is here.
In the house.
Oh.
Awesome. So excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me back. I didn't
Yeah.
scare you off last time. That's
No.
good.
Oh, it was such a good conversation.
so
and
good.
listeners, I just encourage you, go back. I can't remember if it was season 1 or season 2, but go back,
Like one.
just search up Ann Thompson's name, listen to the episode. It's worth your time.
Yep.
And
I think there were
thank
2
you.
episodes.
I think it was 2.
We got into the conversation.
did.
That's
get into
right.
it.
Yeah.
We did 2
We're into
episodes.
it.
Yeah.
So, listener, go back because even though we want to hear a little bit of Ann's story, we don't want to rehash things we've already talked about, unless the Lord says that's what we're supposed to do. But listeners, go back, check out Ann's previous episodes. We're really, really glad that you're here and taking time to be here with us. 30 plus years, if I read right.
That means I'm old.
Why?
When you start at 10, you start at 10, this is what happens. 30
I know.
years, corporate leadership,
Corporate leadership, some
entrepreneurship,
entrepreneurship.
executive coaching,
Yep.
and now
Yes.
author
Author.
and speaker.
That's so amazing. The author piece, when I was probably 7, I told my mother I wanted to write a book someday.
Okay.
And I just kind of forgot about it. I mean, I didn't really forget about it. I always had a bunch of ideas
Right,
brewing
right.
in my mind, but it felt a bit surreal to see the actual book in
Super
print.
cool.
And my kids are like, my mom wrote a book,
That's awesome.
which
That's
is pretty
so good.
cool. Which is pretty
That's
cool.
so good.
Well, I don't know what the statistics are, but they say a lot of people want to write a book.
Yeah.
And the percentage of people who actually get it done, because it's actually really challenging.
It is.
Can be. It can be.
It's one of those where it's not about being smarter than anyone else. It's just about not stopping.
It's diligence.
If you just
It's
keep
the
going, you
diligence.
will write the book.
Yes.
For most people, it's hard to just get her done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Ann, talk about the book. The book is entitled Faith at Work.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit. In fact, we got for the listeners.
Oh.
There it is.
Beautiful.
There it is.
Looking in.
Beautiful. For our listeners only, Faith at Work is the book. It's got green, blue on it. Oof.
Teal. I love teal.
Teal's a great
because
color.
it's the
You're wearing it.
combination. I am. Well, this is
Come on.
kind of more navy.
Well, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, but I love those color combinations. So yeah, it's Faith at
good.
Work. The subtitle of the book is "It's a practical guide to aligning your career with who God created you to be."
That's so awesome. Yeah.
Nice.
And
Nice.
of all the books that are outlined on my Google Drive,
Mm-hmm.
this is the one that felt like the topic that over the course of my career I've had the most questions about from people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Not because I've been a coach all my career, an executive coach, but
Right.
more people I think just recognized
Mm-hmm.
that faith was always part of my approach.
Yeah.
You know, I never proselytized people in the workplace, but people recognized and learned about me over time that
Mhm.
my faith was very central to who I am and to how I led. And people always have all these questions like, I want to do what God wants me to do with my career. What do I do?
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. And so I had that question so often that it just so naturally led to writing down what I
Right.
end up teaching people. And in the process, the Lord showed me how many different types of career transitions He's brought me through,
Right.
which led to an even more robust exploration of how does God work in our careers
Yeah.
and through our careers to shape and mold us into who He's created us to be all along.
Right. That's his desire.
Yeah.
For
Jesus,
for
yeah.
listeners who are interested in content creation, what Ann just said is really, really important.
Mm,
If you're thinking to yourself, I want to create something.
yeah.
Go back and look and review what are the things that I get asked to answer? What are the questions
Yes.
that I get asked the most?
Yes.
It is very likely that whatever that is what you should be creating some content
Totally.
around. Because very practically, it's something that people in the natural are picking up on.
Yeah.
Also, in the kingdom, that means the Lord has put something in you
Yes.
that people notice, which is what Ann is saying. She's like, they just happen to notice the way I'm functioning, and they're asking this question. So just want to encourage the listener, if you feel like, I feel like I'm supposed to create something, I feel like I'm supposed to create some content, go back and think about, what do people ask me all the time? What is that
Yeah.
thing? It could be like how to fix a car. It could be how to make this recipe, whatever it is.
Exactly.
That's the key thing. So I
Yes.
love that. Thank you
Yes.
for sharing that.
Yeah.
Tell us about the origin. Like how do you write a book on faith at work? Obviously it was in you and people were asking these questions and you even said there was an outline that you had on your Google Drive.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the birthing of this.
Yes. So this is such an interesting journey for me. Probably 4 years ago, I wrote almost an entire book on the topic of joy.
Okay.
It's not been published. I don't know if it will be. But I had written this book when I was in a season with the Lord where I had taken a sabbatical from my day-to-day career. I had sold the company that I co-owned and felt like the Lord had invited me, I would say, to take a bit of a break. And during that break, he led me through this journey. I think we talked about it a little bit on the last episode of finding out what was it that brought me joy. And I wrote about that topic. And what I found, I really wanted to publish it. I felt like the Lord had said, you're going to write a book. And I thought, well, this has got to be the book. This has got to be, in fact, I think the Lord has told me I'm going to write more than one book.
Yep.
But I thought this is the first one. And as I dug through that and started trying to get to the point where I felt good about that book, I realized that book is never going to be finished. Because our pursuit of joy lasts forever.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I was kind of disenchanted by that, a little bit upset because I really wanted to write a book. And a couple other people in my life had been saying to me, you should be writing about business. You should be writing about careers. You should be writing about faith at work. And I thought, but lots of people are writing about that. And the reality is actually not a lot of people are writing about that. But somehow in my head, I thought there were.
Right.
Right. Well, in your circles would do that too.
In my circles, for sure.
Right.
In my circles, for sure.
Lots of people
So I went to this totally unrelated conference with my husband, and they happened to have a breakout session. It was a conference for people who are running residential assisted living facilities.
Okay.
And we have some interest in a couple of those. And there happened to be a breakout session that was titled, So You Want to Write a Book? I thought, well, I'll go to that
Okay.
breakout session.
That's
I'll
funny.
go to that breakout session. It was run by some folks from a company called selfpublishing.com. And they basically said from the front of the room, you should write a book about what people ask you about all the time.
Wow.
You should write a book that you could write very quickly and easily. And that night, I went back to our hotel room and I wrote down probably 4 or 5 ideas of things that met that criteria. These are things that people ask me about. These are books that I could write very quickly. And I prayed through that and landed on this topic of career stuff. How do you navigate your career? How do you let God essentially lead the navigation of your career, right? Because that's actually the shift. Most of us think we're supposed to make the choices in our career, but how do we learn how to let God make those choices? And literally, I sat down to start writing the book, and I think it took me about 3.5 months to write it, which is fast, especially considering my husband was going through an open heart surgery at the time. I mean, it was a crazy busy season, but the Lord just kind of poured it out of me. And it was fast. And it frankly, the marketing and the publishing piece of it took a lot longer than the writing piece of it. But it was such a cathartic experience to write it and to even look back and capture really through that lens what the Lord had done in my own career. And as I mapped through my career and saw what I now call the game of chutes and ladders that the Lord has led me on, roll the dice and you go up the ladder, roll the dice and you go down the slide. Here's the interesting insight, though. Most of us think our careers are up and to the right.
Right.
We're always trying to get the next rung on the ladder. But when we were kids, going down the slide was the most fun ever. Right? I'm going down the slide. And in our careers, we don't think that. But actually, sometimes the Lord will lead you to go down a slide, financially, salary-wise, title-wise, whatever it might be. And sometimes those are the most fun adventures because he's setting you up for something else and he's shaping you the whole time.
That's good.
And as I reflected on it, I really started to understand how strategic God is. I think I'm a planner, but boy, his plan is a heck of a lot more strategic and complex and twisting and turning than I could have ever.
Right.
I could have never orchestrated my own journey the way he has.
Right.
It's been really remarkable, and I want that freedom for everybody.
I want to jump in on that just for a second. I got a question for you.
Okay.
As you were reflecting on that, which of course, what's really cool about this is you do get to see God's sovereignty. You get to, you're looking at your own story again, and then you realize, wow, he was really faithful here. He's really fit, right?
Yes.
And that kind of thing, which is really cool. It builds faith in you, which
Yeah.
is really neat. Did you have some places where you ever said this to the Lord, something like, "Oh man, I'm so glad you didn't let me do that."
Yeah.
Like you had some in your heart, like, "Oh, I wish I could do this." You're like, "Oh, thank you, God. I see why you did not let that." Did you ever have any times when you were going through like
I've probably had multiple times like that.
that? Right.
There were promotions I thought I should have
Mhm.
gotten, that I thought I deserved, that I thought I should have had, and they
Mhm.
didn't happen. There were times when I thought I was going to go take this job or that job, and those doors, for me, it was mostly when doors closed
Uh-huh.
that were at the time felt like, but God, this feels like the right thing. Why
Right.
are you closing this
Right.
door?
Right.
And
You're
in
angry,
hindsight,
rejection sometimes, whatever,
yeah,
right?
all of
Okay,
that. It's
yeah.
it's like the,
Time.
am I not good enough for this job?
Right,
Are you?
right.
And the truth is that he just is the masterful architect
Yes.
that is using, because he's got something else down the path.
Right.
I just need to be a little
Right.
bit more patient.
Right. I wanted to
wait
hear
on
that
him.
from you. We've talked about this
Yes.
before, where just as an encouragement to listeners,
Yeah.
if there's somebody listening right now, or
Yes.
right now, or
Feeling
looking
frustrated.
at it, you're
Yep.
like, my boss doesn't respect me, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And man, I'm same as you. I've probably got a dozen places.
Yeah.
Like just the other night, I was thinking that, I'm like, oh God, thank you, you didn't let me do this,
Yeah.
which I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Or was heading toward.
The other really interesting observation, and I remember thinking this at different seasons in my career, the recognition that I learned as much, if not more, in the seasons of my career that were uncomfortable because I had a boss I didn't get along with, or I was frustrated about the work, or it didn't feel like it fit, or I, didn't get the promotion, or like, one time I got fired, that was and I learned as much, if not more, from those things that in the world's view looked like they were steps backwards or bad things, but actually were really good things. The Lord was using them to shape me and form me. And I really believe the heart of this message in this book is we are all made in the image of God. But we don't operate that way. None of us do, because we live in a fallen world. But our careers, our work is a really primary way that God can shape us into who he's created us to be, because he's teaching us all this time through what lights us up and what frustrates us, and where do we have room to grow, and where do we have kind of almost natural wisdom. How are we wired, and what are the desires of our heart? How does all those things fit together? So that's really the heart of what my desire is for people is, gosh, let God lead you on all the twists and turns, and pay attention to what he's actually showing you about how he created you, because it's
really
fascinating.
Yeah. It seems that because you're describing a God-oriented approach
Yeah.
towards life and towards work and towards yourself.
Yeah.
And our culture is really driven by a me-oriented
Yes.
approach
Yeah.
towards life, work, and myself.
And I think, Jamie, I like that you said that. I think in our work specifically, a lot of folks I know will say, well, this is my job, and I'm asking the Lord into it. And that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. It's
better than not asking.
It's better than not asking him.
Right.
Right. But when we do that, he will bless us, and there's favor in that, but we're missing the opportunity to say, God, where are you taking me? How are you leading me? How have you shaped me and formed me? And what's the next piece of this? Right. And the other thing I think people do is they very early in their careers, they think, I've got to find the perfect job.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's
You know, I love asking people to tell me their career stories.
Yep.
Because you never hear someone who says, well, right out of college, I landed the perfect role, and I've stayed in that role my whole career, and I've just grown that. I know very few people for whom that has happened. And oftentimes when I hear that, I'm wondering, really? Is that it? Or have you missed an opportunity? I don't know. That's between them and God. But I think we miss the opportunity to really let him lead our careers when we ask the very good question, how can you be present in my current role? We should be asking that. But we also it's really about, we're good at surrendering lots of things to the Lord, but most of us aren't very good at surrendering our careers to the Lord.
Right.
That's good.
Because it's our paycheck, it's our title, it's our validation, it's our affirmation, and we have a really hard time letting go of that.
Yep. Listener, I want to encourage you. The scriptures say, I'm thinking about Psalm 139. It says, David is talking about the care and concern that Yahweh, the Creator, has said that He knit me together in my mother's womb. That includes like personality types. It includes your muscles. It includes your physical body. It includes your emotional, the way you function emotionally, the way that you communicate. He knit us together in our mother's womb. And it says that He has written every day of our life in His book. So I'm just thinking very practically here. What does it look like to reverse engineer what God the Father has already planned?
Yes. Yeah.
This is what I'm hearing some of what you say.
Yes.
So I just want to encourage the listener. What Ann is saying, I mean, this is like right in line with the Lord has already put an amazing story. An amazing story that if you were to actually follow it, you would be blown away.
You would be.
Because it's almost
Completely.
like, it almost feels like I was created for this. It's almost like you get into sync and you're like, shoom. Oh, wow, I'm doing something that feels so easy.
Yeah.
And while I do it, I feel tired because I'm working hard. But it's easy and fruitful all at the same time. Every one of us can experience that because every one of us has been created in the image of the one who knit us together in our mother's wombs and has written every day, the chutes and the ladders. He wrote them all down.
He did.
In His book, and He's cherishing them. I mean, this idea of God that He loves us, and He loves the plan that He has for us,
And that it's for our good. And it's to prosper us, and it's
That's right.
Yeah.
And what's the block? Like you've coached a lot of leaders. What's the block there, do you think, to that kind of mindset about life, but specifically work?
Yeah. I think here are the pieces I think more people don't get stuck on, and then we'll talk about what I think people do get stuck on. I think people can get around the idea that I have a certain skill set or gifting set, or I have different talents than someone else does. They can kind of get around that. That's been popular work psychology for a long time. You know, all the personality tests and Gallup Strength Finder and all that, they do a really good job of helping us to understand what is my gift, what is my strength. Many corporate cultures will help you understand your gifts and strengths and also your weaknesses. But we're good at that part. We're decent at that part, right? Where I think we get mixed up is two places. One is we buy into this idea that if I'm good at it, I should be doing it.
Oh, that's good. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you should be doing it. So I always ask people to think about what are the things you're really good at that you actually love to do compared to what are the things you're really good at that you just don't like doing.
That's interesting.
You might be really good at spreadsheets, but you actually hate them, right? You might be really good at welcoming people into your home, but it actually irritates you. And it's okay for those things to not be things you love to do. So it's important that we pay attention to not just what we're good at, but what we love to do and what we don't love to do. Equally important, what we're not so good at, but what we love. That's a clue into maybe something we could be developing further.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Right? I love to paint. I love to paint, but I'm not very good at it. And so I've been investing in how do I continue to learn and grow my skill there because that brings me joy, right? Now, the things that you're not very good at and you don't like, don't worry about those. But if you're in a job where you're doing things you're not good at and you don't like, that's another clue. Right? So those things about what we like and don't like are important. But the bigger thing, this is the biggest block I see people having, is that if you read through Scripture, what we see is He knit us together and He planted desires in our hearts. The things that light me up, the things that I have passion for, the things that I get excited about, the things that bring me to tears are different than yours, Jamie, and different than yours, Raz. They're different. Every one of us has different desires in our hearts. And somehow in our culture, in our society, we've told ourselves we have to tamp those things down in our work. Work can't be fun. Work can't be joyful. That just doesn't make sense, right? We think work is toil. We think work is, it's a necessary evil. But actually, God put these desires in our hearts not for us to tamp them down and only do on the weekend. He actually put them in our hearts because they're clues into who He's created us to be, and that does have something to do with our work. It doesn't mean that if your desire as a little kid was to be a firefighter, that that's what you should be, but there is something in your heart about rescue, about saving, about justice, about, kind of bringing healing to something that's broken or restoration. There are clues in sometimes the things that when we were kids we loved to do, or those desires in our hearts. Most of us have to go back to childhood to even find them, because we've just
'Cause it's been so
learned
tamped down.
they've been tamped down. We've been told you can't make a living doing that, or that's not a real job, or that's you can't have fun doing that. Are you kidding?
Mhm.
Or we tell ourselves, I can't make a living doing that. I can't make the living I want doing that.
Right. I want to second that. For a long time, we don't think this way now, but my wife and I, if something came up, a job opportunity or whatever it might be, and it looked really good, we almost assumed it was not the Lord.
Right.
It's
Really?
a really gross way to think.
Wow.
Because that'd be fun.
Yeah.
I'd really like that. So
Yeah.
I mean, it can't.
That's a temptation, is what we tell ourselves.
Or what? Yeah, temptation is like, well, yeah, or
And Paul, was that because the assumption was to follow God means to suffer,
I
and if
think
I'm
so.
having too much fun, then I can't be following God.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a immature mindset, which that
Yeah.
is an immature.
And it's warped. I mean, that's warped.
It is warped.
I say that lovingly to you.
No, no, we see it. I mean, we see it now. I mean,
Yeah.
we would have
Yeah.
almost like not even consider it.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? And that's the enemy. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the enemy looking at us like, and that's kind of that him saying, "See, God's not a giving God. See, He
Right,
told you can't eat from that one tree."
That's Genesis
you know.
3. That's
Exactly.
the serpent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Implying that he's holding out on you.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing is, I know many Christians like that. I mean, I'm not,
Right.
we weren't by ourselves in that idea,
Right.
and so
That's an important observation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think about the scriptures like, delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires
Yes,
of
your
your
heart.
heart.
desires
This
of
is
your
very
heart.
passionate language. In your
Yes.
presence
Yeah.
is fullness
Yeah.
of joy.
Yes.
Exactly.
Your word is like honey. I mean, all this
Yeah.
very evocative, like
Yep. Emotional,
passionate
passionate
Yes.
language.
Yeah, exactly.
Where do you think we got those passions? They were given to us by
Yeah.
the Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I was even kind of reflecting on. It's probably because we're getting around with grandson all the time, whatever. But I was even thinking about when Jesus is saying, "Let the little children come to me," and then it's not just that, but he's saying, "No, if you want to inherit the kingdom of heaven, you got to become like this." No children are like, "I don't want to dance. That would make me," They just dance. They just like I was thinking of Tucker this morning. He has this little thing that we just learned to walk. They push, and it's like a little car, and it's like little beep beep. It'll as soon as he moves, it starts making noise and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And then, but one of the things that'll just break into this little song, and he's standing there, he'll be like,
Boogie in.
he's just boogie. I mean, it's made in you,
Yep.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It's made. So where did it come along? It's like stop dancing,
Mhm.
and that's not acceptable.
Stop creating.
Stop
A
creating.
lot of us learn stop creating.
Stop painting. That's
Stop
not. You can't
expressing
make a living at
yourself.
that,
Yeah.
Whatever. I got a buddy of mine, and this is a little bit of a side story, but I got a buddy of mine that's now he is one of those weird people who knew exactly what he wanted to do, like
Yeah.
a baseball player or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I got a buddy of mine, I'm a musician, and he all his life he wanted to be a certain type of a musician, and he started working on it in junior high,
Yeah.
and he worked his way up like you do, and by the time he was probably mid-20s, he was signed with a label that was one of the biggest labels in that type of thing that you do, whatever, It's funny, but and I find this really interesting. When he was really getting close to like really, really breaking out, he had his in-laws had told him, you need to stop this nonsense.
Wow.
You need to blah blah blah. And now he's huge. He's huge.
Wow.
He's touring across the
Ah.
globe constantly. But
That's so
isn't
cool.
that interesting? But it was so interesting, and not at the earlier point. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
At the point where he's like, okay, I'm making a decent living this already,
Yeah.
and I think things are about to really break.
Yeah.
It's like you need to stop this nonsense. This is,
Wow.
you need to go get a real job, and this dream thing,
Yeah.
blah blah blah.
And you know what? I think people have good intentions.
Oh,
I mean, a lot of times
no question.
parents will do that, and
No
it's not
question.
because they don't have good intentions. They want the
Yep.
best.
Yep.
And I think the mistake we make is we think we can out-engineer God.
Right,
We think we can out-strategize Him. And
right.
there have been 2 or 3 big slides in my career.
Mm-hmm.
I mapped out my salary curve one time, on a little timeline,
That's interesting. Okay.
and it's not up and to the right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not up and to the right. In fact, there's a moment in my career I've not ever returned to that height of salary. That was a very steep slide
Mm-hmm.
that I over the course of a couple of years my salary went way down. But if I'm also map my confidence in myself and my spiritual maturity and my understanding of the Lord and my joy, it's much more up and to the right.
That's good.
It's irregardless of salary, right? But I think in the world, we believe the people we care about. We want them to be financially secure. We want them to be able to retire. We have all of these ideas about what creates stability and what creates value in the world. And so anything that's a salary cut, this is one of the biggest challenges with people I coach is that sometimes the Lord is leading them to something that is going to be a salary cut.
Right.
Maybe temporarily, maybe permanently.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult for people to get their minds wrapped around, but God wouldn't want me to do that. God wouldn't want me to have to sell my house. Really? He wouldn't?
Mm-hmm.
If it meant you were going to be joyful, if it meant you were going to be more of who he created you to be, he probably would want you to do that. Because your house is temporary anyway.
Right, right.
That title is temporary anyway. And what's been interesting in the current environment of so many layoffs and corporate restructures, people are having to rethink some of these things. And actually, I feel like the current generation, the kind of call it 20s, 30s, those the folks who are in the heyday, the early stages to the heydays of their career, they don't have the same mentality as folks my generation. My generation, it was you find a company and you stay there. And frankly, that limited a lot of times God being able to work. And so I do see a different openness now to people recognizing I don't have to just stay in the same place. Right. I can go different places. The one about my salary has to continue to increase, though, that one is very hard to break.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very hard to break.
Right. That's interesting. I was going to ask you about, you went right into it. I was about to ask you about the 20-somethings. Like, because I've noticed that they do have, which I think there's some positive aspects to that of sort of more of a life balance. They have more of a desire for that, which I think can also be positive. You know?
I think the challenge that the younger folks have that I see pretty consistently is this desire to, I've got to be in the exact right place.
Yes.
Right now, that's where I'm going to, and
yeah.
if you read through the book, I talk about 8 different types of career transitions. And the last one I talk about is this one called the confidence stride.
Okay.
And the confidence stride is when you hit the place where you know this is where God wants you. Mm-hmm. And I do believe it can happen earlier in your career, but for the most part, it happens later in your career. Because all the other moves that he's taken you through have taught you more and more and more about who you are, what he's created you for. You've built connections, you've built networks, you've built experiences, you've obtained wisdom, and ultimately now you can start to put the pieces together with him of where that confidence stride is. But I find a lot of young people want to hit the confidence stride right now.
Right.
You know, or they've grown up in a world of instant gratification, and the thought of it might take me 20 years to get to this. To the Lord, 20 years is nothing. 25 years is nothing.
No, it is not.
My 30-year career to him is nothing. It's a blip. Mm-hmm. But when I'm 23 and I'm looking at what's my first job, I don't want to think about my best job will be when I'm in 55. Yeah. I don't want to think about that.
Right.
I want to think about my best job being now.
Right.
So that I think is they're much, from what I see, they're much more open to having multiple career moves, but it's almost because they think they need to get to the pinnacle from a purpose standpoint and all that right away. Yeah. And my very first job, I did not understand the purpose of that job until 20 years later, when I understood what I learned in that role about myself. Right. I was just getting by. I was just finding a job because that's what you did. You just took a job because someone offered you one and it was a good job and you took it. Right. But the Lord will use that. Right? Sure. So I find they're almost a little too picky. Right. The younger folks.
Have you coached a lot of 20-somethings?
I've coached a few 20-somethings. The majority of folks that come to me are folks who are probably mid-40s to early 50s, and they're having this realization of, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? Right. That's the majority. Right. But I've had a handful of younger folks. Okay. You know, generally they don't always afford coaching. Right. They can't always afford coaching, right? But from a mentoring standpoint, I've had several there, and get a lot of them in webinars and things that I do. But so there is a difference in the demographics for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about, and because I've never asked you this, so I don't really know the answer to this question. Coaching someone who doesn't have a faith walk. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? And what might it look like? Because your book, your career, your thrust, I mean, you're not leading necessarily Jesus all the time, but faith is a significant component.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about an unbeliever or someone who really is fairly apathetic about their faith, and they're just like, why does faith matter?
Yeah.
I'm
So
just trying to do my job.
this is interesting because a lot of what I teach in the book and when I speak and when I coach people is the three of us would say this has strong biblical foundation. We understand that. But to a lot of folks who aren't very mature in their faith or who aren't really sure or they aren't believers at all or they don't connect their faith and their work. I coach a lot of folks who faith is Sunday, work is Monday through Friday, right? But the truth of the fact that there are certain things I like and don't like, there are certain things I'm good at and not good at, everybody can relate to. Everybody can relate to that. Also, people can relate to what's that thing down deep in your heart that you've always wanted to do. People can relate to that. Whether or not they don't recognize it, but they may not recognize it's from the Lord, right? But interestingly, as people discover that, I think it does open them up to the possibility of, how did I get this way? Why am I this way? Right? And generally, if I'm coaching someone who's not a believer, I will tell my story, and I will say, I recognize that God had wired me a certain way. God had given me certain experiences. God had given me certain desires, and it helped me to better understand what a great career path was going to look like for me, what joy and abundance and fulfillment was going to look like for me. Those are all words that if I'm not a believer, I still know what they mean.
Right.
I still get it.
Yeah.
And we all want joy and abundance and fulfillment and purpose and all of those that we want. Everybody wants those, regardless of whether we recognize the role that God has had in placing that desire in our heart. We want it.
Yeah.
So it actually is a really interesting way of introducing people to when they're ready, when they ask, when they start to wrestle through it. Gosh, maybe this has something to do with how God created you. Yeah.
In our church family here, in our church community, we're reading through the Bible chronologically, and we're in the midst of Solomon and the wisdom literature. And I'm just thinking about, the Queen of Sheba and all of these kings and other leaders from all around the world were coming to Solomon for wisdom, and they were drawn to very practical wisdom, but that was given by the Lord. And so even while you're talking, I'm just thinking about the translation of God's wisdom into a way that someone can understand.
Yeah.
We've had previous guests. You can go back and listen to an episode with Chuck Proudfit, and he was the first who ever said this, and it clicked in my mind because I'm primarily an institutional church leader. That's my work experience. And he said it's important that we think about stained glass language versus plain glass language. And stained glass language is your churchy language, your sort of religious language. And plain glass is what you're describing. Desires and joy and abundance and fulfillment. Those are biblical concepts, but you're using language that someone doesn't have to think about the religiousness of it or think about biblically about it. They're just able to see the plain glass nature of that. So I really like that. Being able to translate, I think, is an important skill to help someone understand that.
Yeah. I think even interestingly, Jamie, what I would add is because of what we talked about before, that a lot of believers struggle to surrender their career to the Lord, that starting with I'm using air quotes. If you're only listening, I'm using air quotes. The worldly language of joy and abundance. If I see those through a worldly lens, I might actually start to lean in a little bit more, even if I haven't completely surrendered my career to the Lord. Right. And as we hear people's stories about how their careers have led them to that, we start to see the path. And so we can start to recognize, wait a minute, maybe God does really care about my work, and he really does care about my career, and he really does have a plan. And part of that plan includes my career. It includes the individual roles that I'm going to come into and out of over the course of my career. So I would say it's not just a non-believer who can relate to that, but many times it's the bridge for us as believers to really begin to surrender our careers to the Lord. Yeah.
So, Ann, I'm going to ask you for some free coaching right here for our listeners. Let's say you
You were lucky you were
this is
listening.
Fantastic.
To today, right?
You got to pay her for this. We're just going to pull out of
Go
her.
buy the book. No.
I am thinking about the book because I'm thinking for the listeners, like, okay, I've never really considered these things. I'm gonna pick up this book, and we're gonna link it below in the notes so that you can pick it up and you can take a look at it. But what would be like base camp? Like, I'm starting this journey. I have never even thought about this. My mama just said, get a job, and I've been working, and
Yeah.
I've been providing for my family. I got a couple kids. My spouse is great. What's base camp? Like, what are the first couple of steps, other than buy the book? I get that. But what are the
Number one, by the way.
what are like the first steps that you would encourage and you would coach somebody to begin this journey?
Yes.
We're talking about Psalm 139. We're talking about wisdom. I mean, all this stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah.
What's the first step, entry point to begin to move into this realm?
Yeah. Most of the time, I have people start with an exercise that just looks like a timeline. So imagine you've got a horizontal timeline, and you're going to mark the year that you started working, right? Maybe that was when you were 16 and you got a job at Skyline Chili like me. You mark the year you first started working, and you mark today's date, and you create milestones for each different job that you had. And you kind of capture those on that timeline. And then I encourage them to say, go back to that season when you worked at Skyline, or when I worked at Macy's, and when I worked at Procter, and then when I got promoted at Procter, and then when I got promoted again at Procter, and then when I worked at this place, right? So you're going to put every single job there. And I want you to look back and ask and think about and consider, what did I learn in that role about who I am? What skill of mine got developed then? What thing did I learn I really don't like? What thing did I learn I really do like? Where was I, what were the things that brought me joy in that role? What were the things that brought me down in that role? And write those out. Write those out kind of along the bottom of that timeline. So now I've got a list of, or I can look kind of longitudinally at all of these skills and talents and gifts and experiences, and maybe what you had from a particular job was, I made this connection with this person, or I met my spouse at this job, or whatever. But when you look across those, then you can start to say, what if we thought about each of these as puzzle pieces? And the Lord is constructing these puzzle pieces, and our job now is to say, okay, Lord, how are you putting these together? And or if I'm in the middle of my career, oftentimes it's a chance to say, oh, every time you've developed something different in me, I shouldn't be afraid of this next one. Not necessarily being a culmination, but I trust that something new is I'm going to have another puzzle piece after this role or the next role, right? We might look at those pieces and say, this doesn't make any sense to me yet. In that case, I'm saying, cool. Let's figure out what the next role is so that you can figure out what the next puzzle piece will be, right? So that's oftentimes the very first exercise I have people do. And then from there, we start looking at some of what I chatted about earlier. What do you love that you're good at? What do you love that you're bad at? What do you hate that you're good at? What do you not like that you're bad at? And we just start mapping through some of those things to start to identify, what do I already know about how God's created me and how he's designed me? And then we can do some work about, well, if this and this and this, what might be the right next steps for me? Right? Sometimes that's
Two good, simple things. Right?
Yeah, it's very simple. And sometimes the next step is, stay where you are. Sometimes the next step is, it's time. You should be looking for the next promotion. You're ready to move up. Let's figure out what that might look like. And sometimes it's, you're ready to pivot. You're ready to make a change. But as we look at those things, we look at the timeline and what we've learned, and we look at what we love and what we don't love, and what we're good at and what we're not so good at. It starts to help us paint a picture of what God's doing, what he's doing in our careers to help shape us into who he's created us to be. Yeah.
What about, I'm thinking about the really, really young person who maybe hasn't even started working yet.
Yes.
I imagine you can go back into life history and pick up some of those milestones. But just talk a little bit about that, of like the person. We've got folks in our church family that are late high school, thinking about college. They're in college. They're thinking about career. They've just come out of college, just got married, maybe got some kids on the way. They may feel like, I don't have all these milestones that Ann's talking about. Address high schooler, college, young adult?
Yeah. So I think when you're younger, there are two tools that I usually recommend. One is that same one about create this little matrix of what am I good at that I love and don't love, what am I bad at that I love and don't love. You can start creating that.
That's who you are. Yeah.
And I always tell people this is a dynamic document.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, you might realize, oh, I thought I loved this, but actually now that I get into it, I really don't like it.
Yeah.
Or I thought I hated this, but I had to do it and I did it and I realized I'm really good at it and I actually like it. So it can be a very dynamic document. But the second tool I call the Moscow list.
Okay.
MSCW.
Okay.
M stands for things that right now, where I sit, must be true in my first job or my next job.
Right.
These are the things that are important to me.
Okay.
That might be a certain salary. It might be a certain part of the country you want to live in. It might be the type of company you think you want to work for, the industry you think you want to be in. It can be those types of things, right? What are the things that must be true?
Yep.
If it's not present in the job description, I won't take the job.
Right.
The next is the should.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that I'd really like it if this was true.
Mm-hmm.
This would be cool,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe it's about how much you travel, or maybe it's about I'd really like it to be a startup, but it doesn't have to be a startup.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I really would like it to be healthcare, but it doesn't have to be healthcare,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's the shoulds. The
Okay.
next is the coulds.
Okay.
These are the things I'd put up with.
Okay.
I'd put up with it if I had to be in the office 5 days a week.
Gotcha.
Not really what I want,
Mm-hmm.
because up here on the should, I said, hybrid,
Yep.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So what are those things you'd put up with? Those are the coulds. And then the W are the things that won't be true.
Mm.
These are my non-negotiables.
Mm-hmm.
I won't work in the tobacco industry. I won't work in a big corporate environment, right? And again, this is a dynamic document,
Right.
but we start creating that document early in our careers, and it begins to help us filter through. Ideally, it's informed by what I love to do, what I don't love to do, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, and what some of my interests are. Early on, our interests might be clues into desires of our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to work in healthcare.
Yeah.
I love when there's a purpose to a business, or
Right.
Right.
I love people, or I love math, or I love serving. Whatever it is, right? We're going to inform that list. That list is often a way for people to express something in here that they haven't quite, in their hearts, that they haven't quite identified yet.
Mhm.
So that simple Moscow list becomes incredibly important then when I'm looking at job possibilities.
Right.
Because I can look at one and actually sort through it. I'll tell you a story. I had a young woman that I mentored for a while. I talk about her in the book. Her name is Jade. And she had gotten out of college and gone straight into a consulting role, which wasn't really a consulting role. Right out of college, you work for a big consulting company. You're a research hound. You're just
Right.
grogging through research. She hated it. She hated it. It was not where she wanted to be. She moved to another consulting company thinking maybe that would be better. It wasn't. She ended up getting laid off from that company, and that's about when she found me. And we started talking through, what do you really want? And what do you like? What do you not like? And we ended up realizing that where she wanted to start to lean was more towards HR, human resources type of stuff. So we created a Moscow list that included the types of work she wanted to do, what she was good at, not good, all that stuff. We did all those tools. And she started sorting through jobs that became available. We talked a lot about how do you effectively network to find a job, because in case you didn't realize this, if you apply for a job on LinkedIn, you're one of thousands of people that have applied for a job on LinkedIn. You're probably not going to hear back. The best way to find a job is networking. So we talked about effective networking. And as we did that, she came across this role that was for a healthcare startup, which those were on her must list. She wanted a startup. She wanted healthcare. But the title of the role was executive assistant.
Okay.
And she immediately, at first glance, said, this is the job for me. Thank you very much, but no thank you. And I said, well, hold on. Let's look at the job description.
That was based off of the title. She was
The
going
title.
off of the
It's
title.
going off the title.
Yep.
Yeah.
She didn't even want to look at the job description.
Right.
We looked at the job description, and what we saw in there was that a big chunk of this job was employee events, coordination of benefits, figuring out kind of not necessarily comp plans because she's pretty young, but how do we do performance reviews, things
Sounds
like that.
HR.
A lot of HR type of stuff.
Yeah.
I said, you need to go interview for this job. So she interviewed for the job, and she talked to them about this. And she said, well, this is really exciting to me. These pieces I'm good at, but I'm not as excited about them. she ended up getting the job. She asked them to change the title, which I thought was interesting. They wouldn't. And so we had a conversation about, is the title on your must list or your should list?
Right.
That's good.
Because the content of the work here is exactly what you want.
Right.
And none of the things about this job are on your won't list.
Mm-hmm.
It was a remote job. She wanted a remote job. I mean, it met every other criteria. Interestingly, she took that job. Within a year, that company got acquired, and she moved into an HR job.
Wow.
A full-on HR role, right?
What I like about that, the Moscow thing, is it's a filter.
Yes,
right?
it becomes a filter.
A really good filter.
Yes. In fact, you can, if you're an Excel nerd, you can turn it into a little Excel sheet, and you can have your jobs across the top in each of the columns, you can rate them.
Yeah.
You can rate them.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which of my criteria do these meet?
Right.
If you're lucky enough to have multiple opportunities, you can do that.
Right.
And the really interesting piece about the Moscow list is if you do it well and an opportunity comes up that is not a good fit, you're going to be more confident saying no to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is hard to do sometimes because you're scared.
like,
what if another opportunity doesn't come up?
Right.
But it actually is helping us to move toward how God created us.
Right. That's good.
What I love in that story now, she's got history now of watching the puzzle maker
Yes.
at work.
Yes.
And of course, you were helping her. You were like,
Yeah.
let's look at this piece. This piece has got this circular spot right here. Look at this open spot. And now she gets to watch how the puzzle master, her father, God the Father, actually has fashioned her. And now she sees within a year or the time frame that you mentioned, now she's in this position.
There's another really interesting twist to her story. She's a musician. And she's had this thing in her heart for a long time about writing music, worship music, and performing. And she really was wrestling with, I kind of want to do this full time, but I don't know that I'm ready to do this full time. And the fascinating piece was as she got the career part sorted out, all of a sudden the Lord started opening doors for her music. And so now she's very effectively developing more than a hobby, but she's found a role that allows her space to do that work, to do that development. And so at her age, this is where she should be, in my belief, based on everything I know about her. This is where the Lord has her. Right now, she's in a season where she's doing music a bit on the side, and she's learning and she's growing there, but she's also developing these other muscles that I believe he's telling a broader story.
Yeah.
Right? She's young enough that, he's telling a broader story that all of these pieces actually are integral to. But if she chose, I'm only going to go for music right now, she probably isn't ready to be successful there.
Right.
There's some other things she needs. And if I chose to go only into this, she'd be tamping down this thing in her.
Right.
Right. And she has multiple desires. Most of us do. She wants to play music and be creative. She wants to shepherd people, and she wants to improve lives through healthcare. It's okay that we have multiples. He's a pretty complex God.
Right. Yeah.
So it's been really fascinating to watch her journey as a young person, and the joy on her face, the transformation from where she started to where she is now is really remarkable. It's just testament to that God wants us to have full, abundant, joy-filled lives.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I want to ask a personal question just for you, because hopefully you practice what you preach. I mean, you've been looking at milestones, you've been Moscowing the mess out of your life. I say that lovingly.
Again, this is not about communism.
I don't know what's communism.
It's not at all. Not at
When she
all.
said it, I got nervous. I don't know.
Why are you using that accent? I was feeling very. Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Tell us a little bit about what you're kind of starting to see what the Lord is doing right now. So we got the book, we're writing Faith at Work, or we're still coaching. I'm assuming you're still doing executive coaching. What do you sense? I mean, what are you personally feeling like, oh, the puzzle master's doing something.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see something at work. I wonder if you'd be willing to share. And I get it that it's not fully baked. You're just trying to tiptoe as he shines light on next steps. What are you feeling from the Lord, in this season?
It's a great question, Jamie. So I was mentioning to you guys before we pushed record that I felt like what the Lord was doing in this season was I was going to write a bunch of books. And I do believe the Lord has more than one book for me to write. But I was going through a Bible study with some friends of mine, and right after the book launched, and I had started the second book. It's outlined. It's probably more than outlined. It's started. And I was gung-ho on that, but I also was feeling a little bit of lack of peace about that. So as I'm going through this Bible study, totally unrelated, I hear the Lord say, you just had a baby, this book, and you're going to abandon it to go have another baby? You need to at least get this thing out of diapers. Right? And so I realized that God had more for me to do with this book, with this message. Right? It'd be easy for me to gloss over this because this is just how I've lived, but this is an important message for a lot of people. And I thought, well, great, I'll do that. And then I realized he kind of invited me to go into, why did I so quickly jump to the second book? Was there something else going on there? And I leaned into it a bit and prayed about it a bit. And what hit me was I think we talked a little bit about this last time. I have a fear of success.
Right. I remember that. Yep.
I have a fear of success. My first, kind of my career at Proctor peaked, and right about then my marriage fell apart. The garage group peaked, and then I burned out. Right? So I have this experience with success that feels bad, that feels like bad things happen. And as I pressed into this, I realized part of the reason I want to nurture this book is because then I don't have there's no way it's going to be successful if I don't put any effort behind it.
Interesting.
Then I don't have to worry about that. And I felt like the Lord was saying, hey, part of what I'm doing in this season is teaching you that you are now a different person. You've grown, you've matured, you've deepened in your connection to me. You've grown, and you aren't going to handle success the same way.
Yeah.
Because you're letting me truly lead this. Not that that implies maybe that God wasn't leading my career before. He was, but just my level of, this is true for all of us. Salvation we work out over time, right?
That's right.
And He really helped me to see this season is about embracing success and being confident that He's equipped me.
Yeah.
He's equipped me for it.
That's great.
So
That's
great
really
question,
good.
and I would have answered it differently 3 months ago. I would have said, well, I'm writing the next book because
Right.
He's told me 4 or 5 that I should
Right.
write. He still told me 4 or 5. It's actually 8 that I need to write.
Right.
And I know I'm pretty sure what the next one will be unless He changes something in the next couple of years. But I'm not as anxious to go write it
Yeah.
because I realize He's doing a work.
Don't you love? And this is what a lot of our really great guests, like you and the John McCarthy's and so on, it's the really good questions. Our God is such a good question asker.
Yeah.
When he's asking you those questions, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, why am I so quick to go? I love that. Jesus always did that, right? I mean, even well, what do you want me to do for you? Well, He's blind, dummy. But he's like, no, I want to know what your heart is in this.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do for you?
I read
That's so good.
I read a book recently and interviewed on my podcast a guy named Dan Owolabi. Do you know Dan?
Okay.
You guys know him? He's up in Wooster, Ohio, but he wrote a book called Authentic Leadership. And he talks about in the book that in order to really be an authentic leader, we need to know ourselves. In order to know ourselves, we have to be willing to challenge ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is really all about that exact thing of me kind of leaning into, okay, Lord, why did I want to do this so quickly? And his push on that was important for me. Reading that book was important for me to recognize I can't just glance past this and say, oh, okay, well, you said I have to stay on this book. It really was, I had to challenge myself for why was that not my natural response? And it was such a great encouragement that if we are leaders and we're growing in our faith, how are we challenging ourselves so that we are really being as authentic as we can be, as He wants us to be? And it was a very, that was a catalyst for me to have that conversation, that really deep, kind of scary conversation with the Lord about why am I resisting this?
It's interesting, Ann, while you're talking, it's making me think about you were being executive coached by the Creator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a cool observation.
Coaching you.
Yeah.
You were working with Jade. Jade, was that her name? Yeah. You were working with her. You were helping challenge some of her presuppositions.
Yeah.
And here you find yourself in this spot where the Creator, the Father, is coaching you.
Yes.
Beginning to ask some questions.
So good.
Why are you automatically just going to make this decision? It's very interesting to think about that you're a coach and that's part of Abba's that He's put in you, but He's also a coach.
I mean, and truly, that's part of the journey we're on. We're discovering how it is that we reflect the image of the Father. Yeah, it's a great observation. He's a coach. He's a developer. He's deeply interested. He calls us up.
Yeah.
Right? That's a lot of what I do as a coach is call people up.
Right.
And because he's showing me that aspect of his personality is one of the ways I'm created in his image.
That's
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah, it's
that's
pretty
really
cool.
good.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a fun season. It's a fun season because I've learned through writing this book even more to trust the Lord with the chutes and the ladders.
Yeah.
It's just
I like that. Shoots and ladders with Jesus. I like
yeah.
Well, Ann,
That's so good.
thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you for your time. Thank you for sharing. This has been when I was looking at my emails and I was just looking at my schedule. I was like, oh man, I get to talk with Ann Thompson today.
Exactly.
I can't. It's just gonna be fun. The book is Faith at Work.
Hey, they work. All right.
We're gonna put.
Dang, I was going to steal it. Yeah, there we go.
Vanna here has the
We're gonna put the links in the show notes, and we'll put links also to Ann and her website so you can get a hold of her. I wonder, Ann, would you be willing to just pray over our listeners? All of them. I mean, we're gonna have listeners who are starting out in their career, some that are in those, the liminal space that we were talking about, those transition moments.
Yes.
That are maybe mid-career, some that are looking at towards retirement or refirement. Who knows? They're in this spot. And would you just pray?
I will.
The best executive leadership coaching prayer. As you sink in with the Lord, just praying over our listeners. As we close this out.
I would be honored to. I will say one more thing before one other link I'll give you guys.
Yes, please. Yeah.
I'll give you guys a link for the show notes that is a quiz.
Yes.
That takes about 3 minutes and will help you discern where God might be leading you next in your career.
That's awesome.
So I'll give you the link to that quiz too.
Yes, we will put it in the show notes. Listeners, grab it.
Yes.
Definitely.
Father, thank you for what a masterful creator you are. Thank you. You've designed each one of us with a certain mix of gifts and skills and talents and desires that reflect who you are. Thank you for the gift of work and how it molds us and shapes us even more into who you've created us to be. I pray a blessing of courage over listeners right now. In Jesus' name, that they would have the courage to surrender their career path to you, whether they're going to go up a ladder or down a slide. Lord, I pray for courage for every single one to trust your plan is good, even when it looks a little twisty and turny on the surface, that you have a plan that is good because you know exactly how you've created them, and your desire is to shape and mold them even more into the image of you that you have designed and created them to be. Thank you, Father, for the work that you've done in my life in this space. Thank you for the work that you have done in so many others who've gone before me to model and show me what it looks like to lay down my career to you. Father, I bless every person that's listening, that whatever stage they're in, whether they're at home right now and not working, or whether they're working or in transition, or they're trying to figure out their first role, that you would just speak clearly to them about where you are working in their careers, even right now. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So good.
Thank you.
Thank you
That
so
was
much
fun.
for being here with us.
Yeah.
Dog. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Ann Thompson, coach,
Yes.
author,
Yes.
most importantly, daughter of the Most High God, and loved by Him
Yes.
and loved by us.
Absolutely. And thank you for
Thank you
for
so
having me.
much. I am Raz. This is Dr. J. We always have our boy Mike Brownfield
Thanks, Mike.
taking care of us. You're not seeing him wave, but we're waving him. And we will get him on this side so you'll know who he is when you see him on the street. So anyway, we appreciate you guys. Hey, if this has been awesome to you, subscribe, send it on. And again, we'll have all the stuff you need in the show notes.
Take the quiz.
Take the quiz.
Yes.
Take the quiz.
All right. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.